All right, we are live. Welcome everybody to Raising Multilinguals Live. My name is Tetsu Young. It is uh, almost the midway of 2024. Can you believe this? This is last week. I thought we said Happy New Year, and now we're already on the point of returning. and For this session, we have a very special guest in various ways. So, first of all, just a little announcement from the part of Raising Multilinguals Live. This will be the last session before Uta and I we go off on a sort of a what do I say sabbatical. We'd like to take some time to go over all the past sessions. We're completing 4 years of interviews with this one, and so we're going to go back and create something for you guys. And that's going to take some time and effort. So we're going to go on a sabbatical for the rest of this year and come back in 2025. So that's one announcement. And then so I said, we've not covered something that's dear, very close to my heart. And I thought the perfect person would be Stuart Jay Raj, who's our special guest today. We've not really talked about when we raise multilingual kids, what do we want them to become? What are the things that you can do with multiple languages? We all know it's good. It's good for communication. But specifically, what can you do with that? And I've decided we'd invite Stuart. He's a very special polyglot, which I think he'll define later. Somebody who uses many languages in a special way in his career. We're going to be talking about that, how to use languages as a superpower in your career. So welcome, Stuart. Thank you very much. I've been following your work for many years before actually meeting you in person in Fukuoka in 2019 at the Polyglot Conference. But you're a very special polyglot. In my mind, you're sort of different from the pack in that you're not just interested in languages, sort of learning for the sake of learning. There's, which is fine. Of course, many people do that. They love languages, but you love languages and you're also putting it in practice in a different way from other types of polyglots. And we'll definitely get into that. So welcome. Thank you for sharing your expertise and your time with us. Ute, a little word from you.
Yes. Hi, everyone from wherever you're joining us. My name is Ute Limacher-Riebold from Ute's International Lounge. And yes, this is the last session for this year, but surely not the lastest at all. So we are really looking forward to interviewing Stuart today about this topic. And maybe we just jump in with the first questions. What do you think?
Absolutely. We actually like to start with a question that sort of presents our guests without us doing, a reading down a list of descriptions. So, Stuart, tell us, like, around languages, your background, what made you realize, your superpower, what got you into languages, what got you hooked?
Okay, first of all, thank you to both of you too for this opportunity. It's an honor to be here. What made me realize that cultural and linguistic skills were a superpower? I had a bit of a weird upbringing. So my mother is Anglo, like Australian, so she's white, and my father is Fijian Indian. So half the population of Fiji are Indian, and they're four generations Indian from Fiji. And then so they were there, but my folks, they divorced. They got on well, but they divorced when I was 2. And so I grew up with both my grandparents more, and then also I had a surrogate family growing up. So we had the Fijian Indian side. They speak Hindi, of course, but my grandfather, so my mother's father, who is white Anglo-Aussie, back in the Second World War, he was a radio operator, so he spoke around 11 languages. And so from German, French, Italian, what else? Latin, Russian, Hebrew, and a whole slew. He spoke fluent Mandarin, and he was in there. And I actually, when I was a kid, I had these Chinese books. I don't know if anyone's learned from the elementary Chinese books, where you have Anna and Ding Li or something like that. But anyway, he had that series from the 40s before 简体字 were finalized. There were only half of them.
Simplified Chinese for those who don't know.
Simplified Chinese, yeah. So anyway, so he had the languages there, and I think when you're asking when did I realize, he used to play with with languages. We'd listen to Morse code on the radio. We learned Morse, and we'd tap to each other, and we make broadcasters. So we'd make literal like transmitters. So it wasn't just language, but it was computers. We'd bounce hexadecimal and binary off of each other. Back then, Commodore 64s, and language was a part of that. And so I still remember the Commodore 64 codes, 53280, I think that was the border, 53281, 1, but all of this was from back then. And we would play with languages and work with sounds and speak like Chinese and Italian accent. And so that was part one of it. And part two of it was with my surrogate Indonesian Chinese family. So they came a little bit later on, but so the base language.
So you're still living in Australia, or you're living
that was
in
Australia, yeah. But this, think of this as it was almost a safe house for Indonesians. It was within a church back then, and that's another story in itself. I'm atheist now, but it was a very interesting upbringing, and so I grew up in that family as well. And so they spoke Indonesian as the base language, and Javanese, and then also there's Mandarin. And so between that and my grandfather's influence with Italian, he used to, even though he's not Italian, he was a radio announcer after the war, and he had the Italian radio program for many years in Australia, and with a lady, Franca Arena. She became a politician later and everything, but he wasn't Italian at all. But back then, he had all this migration, and so my grandfather, I looked up to him just for everything. I thought he was awesome, but everyone else thought he was a freak. And I was also a freak by extension, because I was the only one that would follow and love all of those things, while everyone else was playing cricket and football and more Australian things. And so that was the superpower then. Language was just a part of this whole mix of stuff. And I guess
whether it's Morse code or all these, it's still kind of a language. You're communicating.
Absolutely.
Yeah, no, well, actually, in my Minecraft program, I use Morse because it's amazing. You start, and very quickly, if you do it, I have a clip that I did years ago where you can go onto YouTube and find it after this, where I teach Morse code and ASL sign language, the alphabet simultaneously. I wrote a song. And so, and if you do that, say 3 times, you've got a lot of it. But what happens with Morse is that you, so da, 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 so it's almost like, I handily have my keyboard here. So that's the T, da, 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 is H, da, E, da, da, is HE. And so you start being able to feel even the like meanings, and you get bigger and bigger chunks of meaning just through rhythms and sound. In a minute, once you get out of that, you don't realize that you're hearing dots and dashes, but you're actually hearing meanings through something that's totally wasn't there before.
How old were you?
About 4 or 5 when we got into it, but it's just
as far as you can remember, basically.
Yeah, it's just always there. So and my daughter has got it now with the song that I wrote when she was about 2. We used to play the song all the time: apples, bees in a hive, da 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 da, cotton candy, da da da, dogs behind, da da da, eggs, doo. And so to stamp the syllables, and she gets Morse. So, but all of this stuff, music, computers, language, accents, sounds, they're all just creating meanings with sound or other stuff. And we had fun with it, and everyone else thought we were freaks. So
this started very early, and it's just been a continuum since then, all the way to your adulthood. Like,
it's just got more freaky.
Or more linked, maybe everything more linked than
Yeah.
at the beginning.
So my grandfather also, like, he taught me to read kanji from one, and so actually all the kanji cards that he had from the 40s were in Italian. Don't ask me why. And many of his Japanese books were written in Italian. So I was learning Japanese through Italian back then as well. But he would teach me stroke order and using the maopi to write even back then. And then it went on, and I just continued on that route. And I guess I was in my teens then when I started getting into more Middle Chinese, and then the links between, well, why when it says the Chinese pronunciation in Japanese does it sound so different to Mandarin? And so I actually started getting into, okay, this is what it was originally, and this is what was happening in the mouth. And as a musician, I love sound and understand sound. And so the ability that I got early on, I guess by not having somebody stop me, of being able to hear sounds agnostically outside of any language or outside of anything, and then being able to reproduce them, became the superpower. To this day. And so with my daughter, I know we're going to talk to her about her later on. But I've tried to train that in here. I believe everybody has the potential for perfect pitch and be able to replay everything. And my daughter has it now, and she's like 4 now, but it's pitch is just a normal part. I can say, sing me a C, sing me an E, and it's there. Yeah, like that's an E, that's red, everywhere. Is green. And so we play with all these colors and sounds and everything, and it goes into language with her too.
You are a freak. so before we get into the next question about how you use languages in your work, let's do a little summary of the languages that you actually speak. And if you want to go into ASL and whatnot, it's all included. So
but this is the thing, and you would hopefully be able to feel in a similar way. I think, one, I hate the term polyglot.
Good. Sounds like a disease.
And I think all of us, like even people like Luca and you and Richard, we don't do it to count languages.
No.
But so is that. But I'll just, if you follow the evolution, so there was Italian when I was young, and that moved on to Spanish later on, and especially during university. I ended up with a whole bunch of South Americans and a Chilean girlfriend for about 4 years. And so my Italian went by the wayside and gave way to Spanish. But it's still in there. And then also when I was quite young, Danish. I was probably der vil jeg skåne mange udvekslingsstunder her. The many, like, I love the word udveksling. So ud out, væk in the open, shot out in the open, students, exchange students. So many exchange students that came from Scandinavian countries to Australia, the whole bunch, and then many from my school that had gone over there. So we all end up speaking this mangled Scandinavian hybrid together, of Danish, Norwegian, and Swedish. That's another story too. I used to go and hang out at the consulate and read newspapers in Danish. But anyway, Danish, and then Norwegian and Swedish, less so, but Danish is somebody left a comment that you only speak one and the other two will be mangled. And that's very true. But I've been trying in earnest to really be able to segregate my Swedish and Norwegian over the past couple of years. And then Thai, of course, Indonesian, Malay, and a bunch of dialects through Indonesia. So Javanese and those, and including the scripts. Thai, and so there's all the Thai and the Thai dialects. The strongest dialect, I guess, is Northeastern, Isan and Lao. And then going also from this, in southern Thailand, they speak Kelantan Malay, which is like northern dialect of Malay. From, there used to be a kingdom of Kelantan. and so those dialects as well. And then these are the ones that I use regularly and for business: Mandarin, Cantonese, and then a bunch of old, ancient, up until modern dialects of Chinese. It's just if I go anywhere in China, I'll normally I have, this is my Remarkable here. I don't know if you've seen Remarkables, but I've got tone charts and Gedney charts. So if I go anywhere, I'll take either this or a piece of paper, and I'll map the tones out and the consonant shifts, and I can usually slip into a dialect pretty quickly in China. And same in Thai. As long as you know the spelling in Thai and you know the mapping, you can pretty much slip into dialects very easily. And then Vietnamese. Vietnamese isn't as strong or fluent, but I go there, I can get by, I can read, I can speak, I can live a normal life in Vietnam, I guess, and use Vietnam in day-to-day stuff, but it's nowhere near my Thai or my Chinese. Same with Burmese, Khmer. I can read all of them. What have we got? English, Australian, Australian Sign Language. That was an interesting one. One of our neighbors from my dad's neighbors had a deaf son, and so with him we learned when I was young. I learned signed English. Is signed English, but that was at the change. And so signed English in Australia is based more on the British sign, but it's developed by speaking people. And so in the 80s and 90s, the language spoken by deaf people was called Auslan. And so Auslan is more about spatial 3D environments and facial expressions. And so I also learned Auslan, but my signed English was stronger because as I got into the higher years in high school, there was a deaf unit and the interpreters got given to the younger kids. So I ended up helping interpret for the older kids in my classes if we shared a class. And so I really got into sign language for a while there. What else we got? I don't know. There and then Hindi, of course, and other Indian languages. I can read most Indic scripts, and older scripts, and I've actually developed a whole bunch of primitives shapes which will help fast track any learning of Indic scripts. And so I use those quite a bit. Sanskrit, Pali. I don't know, and yeah, it just goes on, and then a whole bunch of other languages. They get, I guess, my depth in them gets shallower and shallower. Yeah. But there's a lot.
Of course. Now,
yes, but what I can take away from how you describe also your approach to languages and the way that you almost analyze them and you link them between them, you are also a linguist. You haven't mentioned this so far, right?
Yeah, it's just inside, and the shifting of sounds is universal. I often used in my presentations. You look at it, the Thai alphabet is based on the Indic script, which the Indic Brahmi Abugida, which is a map of the human mouth. So you have the back of the throat, ka 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 ka, then the palate, cha 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 nya, then the top of the mouth, da 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 da, the teeth, da 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 da, lips, ba 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 ba, and almost every language follows patterns across here. So if I say ji, moves up to k, so ji gai gai, chicken. If I say church, shirka, kirka. It's the same, whether it's Germanic languages or languages across Asia. The human mouth evolves language in a very similar pattern.
Goodness. So we are getting into the sort of the meat and potatoes of this discussion, where we want to direct towards your profession or your work, I guess, because it's very unique. That's why I wanted to have you on, because earlier you said you don't like polyglots, and let's define sort of what polyglot and multilingual means in the polyglot world. But I think you have a very unique, I guess, way to use languages compared to lots of other people who learn languages and really work within typical language professions, whether it's translation, interpretation, or teaching. You use it in a different way, totally. And so we wanted to get into that.
Sure.
So how do you use your languages?
All right.
You've learned about how you you've loaded them up, and now how do you deploy
So
this?
I got to the end of high school and wondering what to do. And I ended up going into a double degree at that time of education and linguistics. My first week on the job, my first week in university, we had to go out and one of our majors was Indonesian because I already spoke it. You had to do one language that you had fluency in other than English. And so I was doing Indonesian as my major there. And so I went, and there was an Indonesian government office in Sydney, ITPO, the Indonesian Tourist Promotion Office. And I went up there, and at that time, it was just out of the 80s into the 90s. And I don't know if you know a model, Elle McPherson. She was very famous.
Oh, yeah.
And
I'm too old to know.
she'd just done this campaign for Bali. And I was in there, wow, you got to meet Elle McPherson, because these people actually ran the campaign for her Bali whole promo thing. And I say, wow, when I graduate, how do I get a job like that here? And they say, you want it? So I just told you, I'm here just to get information for an assignment. But we were speaking in Indonesian. They said, actually, our information officer's going on maternity leave. She's having a baby. We have no one to do it, and you speak Indonesian, and my Indonesian is near native. You want a job? And so the next day I started. They gave me $10,000. I got air tickets and had to get hotels and get printing. No, it wasn't for me to use, but I had to go and then I had to go travel from Sydney to Brisbane 2 days after that and book all my hotels and everything and speak and basically promote Indonesia to a bunch of tourist heads. And then my boss was Indonesian. It was almost an extension of the consulate. And so I had to speak with them, and they actually weren't allowed to hire Australians. So they were hiring me as though I were Indonesian. I could pull it off. And that was like, just turned 18. And I got back and I thought, this is cool. And even some of the things that happened in that first week have stuck with me to today. And so then I was going to university studying Indonesian, but because of that, I was working with Indonesian government officials and a whole bunch of stuff back then, to the point that the people that I was learning about during university were the people that I was having dinner with during my work. And so you got to know a lot about it. And then I finished that and I started working in hotels. And again, you use the language. It wasn't as sexy as the tripping around the place for the Indonesian government. But then what did I do? And then from then I became a flight attendant, having to use language again. And I did that, took a sabbatical for a bit and came back. And so language had always been a part. But it was never the core of what I did. Mm-hmm. And then when things happened in the 90s, I was spending time in Indonesia, and then everything happened in Indonesia. So Thailand became base. And I found myself working as a simultaneous interpreter for several languages that I spoke. So for Chinese, for Indonesian, for Thai. My Thai came on pretty quickly because I knew a whole lot of the languages that feed into it. And so I was also a Dale Carnegie trainer back then, because that was the university that I ended up being at. They owned the rights to Dale Carnegie here. And so I had to train up as a Dale Carnegie facilitator. And I got my accredited in Washington, but basically I had to facilitate in Thai. And so I was in the deep end on that. And at the same time, as I was a facilitator, because this is Bangkok and there are all these things and there are not that many global, especially back then, interpreters, I found myself working with the UN and other places doing simultaneous interpreting. And so I was working with these global teams, and it just went on. So there was interpreting, there was facilitating, but every time I went out, and because you're working on global level interpreting here in Bangkok, because usually they have like APEC and ASEAN and all of these kinds of things, you learn a ton of stuff. And so rather than just sitting and, interpreting, I would learn and go in at lunchtime, talk with the experts that I was interpreting for. And I started getting called in to also work as their proxies. And so for the UN, I would get trained up in sustainable development, and then became a trainer. And for UN DP, and they had an HIV/AIDS for Asia in China and that. And so I would end up going with them to help them debate the people in the countries rather than just interpret for them, because I got to know them very well. And so I knew what they would be wanting to say rather than me interpreting, just be on their team to be able to have a bit more liberty with what you say. And then with the training, rather than interpreting for Pepsi, they trained me up to be a facilitator of Pepsi's leadership training and their key account management and modern trade in Chinese, in Indonesian, in Thai, in Malay, and in English. So then I started doing that through China for Pepsi, and in Hong Kong, in Thailand, in Malaysia, and Indonesia, and Korea. We did in English though. And so what I found is through interpreting, I got access to some of the top experts in the planet. And so then I built up a level of knowledge that then allowed me to almost tandem with them until I could go on my own in some senses, oil and gas. So I rather than going in and interpreting for these people, they said, look, come in and train me up as a behavioral safety, and I could go off on onshore, offshore platforms, do inspections, and actually use the language to find out what's really going on, speaking to the locals. Got into aerospace the same way. Miss Universe, another one. So I was working Metro TV in Jakarta, and I was a correspondent for Indonesia in Thailand, and I just interviewed Miss Indonesia in 2005 because it was a big thing. It's the first time she'd ever done it. I got back home, and next thing, the president of Miss Universe worked under Donald Trump. Then her name's Annette Kammer. She gave me a call and said, look, Paula was the president, but Annette was like the right hand. She said, could you come back? You registered your name here, but Miss Indonesia said you spoke Indonesian and English, and it looks like she's going to get in the top 10, and we don't have an interpreter. And so that got me onto the team, and I spent the next week with them, and then the next several years on the global Miss Universe team, interpreting.
So for all you language learners out there, how does this sound as a potential career path? Well, it's not even one path. It's like a bunch of different possibilities.
It's buckshot. But you know what the commonality is Dale. So when I fell into Dale Carnegie, they taught me how to facilitate. It took me 3 years to get accredited, but to become a real facilitator. And that core skill of presentations and training and being able to facilitate, once you get this knowledge coupled with that, and then the ability in the language to communicate locally, my product became, I would talk to CEOs then, because I knew a degree about their industry. They trusted me, and the deal was, I don't have to tell you what they tell me, just trust me that I'll find out what the problems are, and I'll let you know what probably needs to get done to fix it. And that became my business. From aerospace to oil and gas, modern trade. And I to this day, I still train modern trade classes. In 2 weeks, I'm running a cross-cultural workshop, training cross-cultural stuff I did for the Thai Foreign Ministry for new ambassadors coming to Thailand. But this whole thing of facilitation skills, domain knowledge, and then the language is just the vehicle that gives you an edge.
Absolutely, 100% agree. And I always tell people, expert in whatever, or somebody who's knowledgeable in something is, excuse me for the term, but it's a dime a dozen. People who love languages or who are experts in languages, in a way, is also, unfortunately, a dime a dozen in the sense, if you combine them, you have an explosion of value. And I think you're the perfect example of that. When you say, you're not really just doing languages, and that's kind of the vehicle And
No, well,
maybe,
the past 2 years, and especially like the past year, I've been running a German tech company. Um, we have 800 developers globally. I ran Thailand across Asia at 400 developers. And so I was the CEO, MD of Thailand and the region, running that and ERP implementation, aerospace, and that. But tech companies. But again, because I've had tech since I was a kid, but the language and the culture side of it gives you the ability to do it across multiple countries, even in this part of the world, where otherwise a foreigner probably couldn't have worked the same way.
it is. It's very difficult to get somebody to trust you with just the languages. I mean, obviously you have interpreters. These are professionals in what they do. What I mean is this extra spark that really adds it. Unless you love languages for the sake of languages, and I would venture to say that's not the majority of the people who, myself included. I speak these languages, but I'm not like a language.
This is where we have to pull on the brakes, and I have to thank my wife, and I think I spoke about this in Fukuoka when you were there, is that honestly, I believe, for myself at least, but I think a lot of the people that were sitting at that polyglot conference, like 600 odd polyglots, many of them hyper polyglots, we're all probably somewhere on the spectrum. And I could talk about the crazy linguistic stuff all day, but the reality is the rest of the world doesn't want to hear it. They don't want to hear it at dinner parties. They don't want to hear it at social events. They don't want you to bring up these topics when you're out there. So, and my wife is a very good reminder to me of this, and I've got the kick marks to prove it in my shins. But if you can take that focus, the crazy focus we have, to get into that minutia of language, and just take a little bit of it and put into a domain that is valuable to business, that's your superpower. Yeah. And so, and that's what I've done, to the point you end up doing stuff within that domain more than what other people in that domain are doing, because you learn it the same way as language.
That's right. That's right. You get an opportunity, you get this trust from the higher ups that they won't, give to just their experts, just because they're not able to make that connection, that real bridging. That's
my aerospace client, they produce engines for Rolls-Royce, GE, and also the structures for Boeing, Airbus. I did the thing where I consulted and helped his company before he was in aerospace. He got headhunted in because we worked so well together. Now it's almost 9 years working with him together. But he got to the point where he trusted me to go to China, cold call supply chain, and speak on his behalf in Chinese, because he doesn't speak Chinese, doesn't speak Thai, he's British. He's a very good CEO, and I know my limits with him. He knows the limits with me and trusts me, and I don't want to let him down. And so we work together as a good team, I think, where I become his linguistic power to execute stuff that his competitors can't do in the region. So it's a really good symbiosis of this stuff. I know what I can't do. And so coupling with somebody can do that stuff, and then you give them extra abilities of what you can do. It's the result is pretty cool.
Nice. My goodness, 35 minutes in, and we're only on question 2. We got a motor. But I think you've covered most of this. But intuitively, what's the thing that you enjoy the most? I mean, if there's one thing you have to name about being a polyglot, let's define it. Polyglot, in the polyglot world, people who learn languages, they say polyglot is different from multilingual, which I had always used interchangeably, but they say polyglot is somebody who learns languages later in life. You have both. You've grown up with some languages, you added languages later, so you actually are both, and maybe you can use them interchangeably. But what's the funnest part that you enjoy the most about being a polyglot or multilingual?
Patterns.
Patterns. Nice.
Patterns. I'm looking up here. As you can see them, I have
The
like
background.
about maybe 20 or so Rubik's cubes of all permutations there. I've got my keyboard here, but everything is patterns. And the more patterns and frameworks you have, the more everything just sort of clips together, and you realize that you're looking at just different facets of the same thing.
Regardless of languages, regardless of culture, regardless of industry, you try to seek out the pattern.
Everything. Like it's just patterns. Like you guys, this isn't a music channel, so I won't bring it in too much. But basically, there's this school of music. I don't know. Can you hear my piano?
Yeah.
Okay. So normally you would know as a normal scale, right?
Yep.
This scale is wrong. And so
wow.
And so
Okay.
when you actually realize, and Bach knew, there's this extra note in here. Instead of 7, there's 8 notes. And then you realize if you space these chords out, so there are only 2 chords in the universe. So you've got a major, you've got a 6th, diminished, 6th, same chord, diminished, and it's moving up.
Sounds like 3 to me.
There's only 2 chords.
2.
Oh, wow.
And then you realize, say, an A minor 7th is actually the same chord as a C 6th, or and then you've got the minor version. So that's a minor, right? But then if you want a G 7th chord, which we learn in normal music is a G 7th, is actually a D minor 6th with a G bass. And so you only need to learn 2 chords in minor, and then the major, and you have every single chord in jazz. And
it may seem obvious to you, but your ability to see patterns.
Well, not only that, it gets wilder. So like this. So this is perfection. This is stability, right? And so the gaps between there, that's the 1st and the 5th. So the 5th is half of that, right? And then to get to here, you've got tone, semitone, tone. So if we take that as binary numbers, tone, so 1, 1, tone is 1, semitone is 0. You have 1, 1, 0, 1. The rest of the scale is the inverse of that. So instead of 1, 1, 0, 1, it becomes 0, 0, 1, 0. 1, 1, 0, 1. 0, 0, 1, 0. And so you realize that every scale then is only a 5th, and then it's inverse sitting on top of each other. That's mind-blowing.
Yeah. It must be if you can understand it. It must be if you can understand it. I mean, definitely music is it's art, but it's also science at the same time. It's
total. And this is the thing.
Mm-hmm.
Language, music, for me, it's pure mathematics. And mathematics is the ultimate in creativity. What all these people say, left brain, right brain, but mathematics is just pure creativity. And the awesome thing is that our human bodies are tuned into it, so we know when something is right, when something is good. We react. The goosebumps go up when you hit those harmonies or whatever. You're just tuned into it. Language is the same thing. So for me, like it's just everything. It's physics, it's science, it's math, it's all just the universe.
Goodness. I would love to go into music with my interest as a drummer, but I'm gonna
we move it away from music.
From that. All these polyrhythms and whatnot, that sounds natural to some, that doesn't to others. I sort of feel, if we bring it back to languages, some things sound easier, some things sounds more difficult depending on the language that you speak. But all this is all fascinating topics that sort of go out of the scope of today's discussion. So this is
therapy for me. All the stuff I'm not allowed to talk around near my wife.
I hope you've had a little bit of therapy right here.
Yeah.
this will live on forever on the internet. So
Yeah.
people who enjoy it will catch on.
But yeah, like you just and I think maybe the key ingredient is I hope that you've sensed my passion for this sort of stuff, and that's what drives it, I think.
Yes, not only the passion, but also the skill to link them all in a way that you can re-see the pattern in all the different domains. So in music, maths, and in languages, and everything you do. So I think that is maybe the underlying thing that they have in common that makes it for you, so that you can use the language, or you can link the language to every domain of life, so to say, or music as well. So we have talked about this before once with Tetsu, that music is also a language, right? So it's everything is a language. And also you were talking about the language, the computer languages that there are. Everything is language. Everything is somehow a way of communication, or of sending a message, receiving a message, understanding, perceiving an emotion, or perceiving, something that is being shared by another person or a computer, but that is also from a person. But I think you made it very clear.
Yeah, and it's mind-blowing that we can do it, and our bodies. I've talked about it before. Think of what's going on in there, right? If I say even if it's language or whatever, la, right? La, that's an A. How the heck can I hear that in my head? What are the mechanics that are going on in my head to allow me to even hear that without something physical buzzing and resonating? And then for my voice box and vocal tract and everything to be able to contract, to be able to produce that exact frequency. That is insane, but we can do it. And so there's one thing to know the science of it, but then there's the other thing to just sort of put it in and just accept that our bodies do it. And that's the practical use of the language. And when you're simultaneously interpreting too, I just go in. For me, a lot of people think that simultaneous interpreting is difficult. For me, it's the easiest thing in the world, because as long as you know the language you're speaking and you understand what you're listening to, you don't even have to think. You just look in your mouth. And our bodies can do it. So I just step back and let my body just kick in. And when I'm simultaneous in interpreting, it's just like it feels like I'm cheating.
I can't talk on the phone without my wife asking me, hey, ask about this thing or that thing, without me losing the discussion completely. I can't input and output at the same time. It's just impossible.
No, and I mean that's a different thing. Simultaneous. The thing is I guess it's a difficult thing to do it here, but when you're simultaneously interpreting, if you say I was even interpreting English to English, I probably couldn't tell you exactly what words are used, because all I'm doing is saying the meanings that are going through my head. So I'm not actually translating words. I'm translating just what
the meaning.
This, again, we can go into the deep end with how do you do it with certain languages that have different syntax, and like Japanese with the verb at the end, and then you're listening for the whole thing.
But this is the thing, though. You generally know what they're saying.
Yeah.
Cadence and everything. People say, oh, because of the structures, but you get it. You know what they're going to say.
If you know it, yes, then yes. But if you don't know it, or you're new to the topic, and that's
you just
quite
wait a bit.
challenging. Yes, then you have to wait until they finish the sentence or whatever, and then start.
But once again, we are about first of all raising multilinguals. So we want to inspire parents out there with languages, raising their kids in different languages, what they can aspire to. Somebody like Stuart, how to do it. You know,
You scared them off.
I was like, oh my gosh.
and
I want
today
that in my
we
house.
did go quite deep with the languages, and this could be a very interesting discussion for those who are learning languages themselves at the current time. Also, so it's all related in that sense. But let's move right on ahead. I have combined the next two questions into one.
Okay.
So your work, how do you see it evolving in the future with all the technologies, coming out? AI translators have, really come a long way. Google Translator is not the same thing that it used to be, 10 years ago, 15 years ago. Do you see this as a threat, or do you see this as a potential?
Well, being the CEO of a tech company too, we see this because there's a similar thing with coders. And I see that most junior devs to middle devs are going to be out of work. But the flip side of that is that people who can actually think and have ideas, you get superpowers now because you have extended your capability. So what I can do with AI tools now goes way, way, way beyond what I could ever do by myself or this. And it's just, you need to be on top of the wave to be able to do it. I've just been playing around these past couple of days. I don't know if you know, but there are these things called AI agents. And as long as you can do a little bit of code, you can use them. But basically, you can set up your own team of employees. You build them yourself. So I want an editor. I want a researcher. And you tell them, you give them the tools. And I train one as a researcher. And then they hand over the work to then the writer. And then the writer hands it to the editor. And the editor hands it to the marketer to check it's all in. And I've built up these profiles coming from me. And then I click a button, putting all this in, telling them then this is what I want. And it takes about maybe 10 minutes. And these people have gone to work for me. And so AI, you get steroids on your steroids with what you can do. But you have to have the mind to understand where the tech is and what you could exploit it for. But if you just sit there thinking I'm an interpreter and then start crying because AI is going to take your job, yeah, it's going to take your job. Go and learn to code.
Wow, cruel realities.
Like seriously, like I'm sorry, and I'm going to offend some people here, but that's not new. But all of these creative people and writers in Hollywood crying, saying AI is taking their jobs, it's like, yeah, boo-hoo. What, you wanted to stop cars, from taking horses away? Find some new way to entertain. Shift. You got to go with the technology. You cannot stop this. And I'll go even further, that I personally don't believe that any brakes should be put on, because it's going to develop anyway. And so you see Europe trying to control what's allowed and not allowed, and in the West and all of this stuff. And in the meantime, here in Asia, and especially in China and places, you got some of the worst people in the world getting access to this insane tech that is being stopped in the West. And so if the worst people in the world are getting unbridled technological development, I want that too. And so I say, take the brakes off, and whoever's left standing, good on you.
Well, definitely, you might as well find a way to work with AI and make sure that it works for you rather than against you. It goes beyond languages. I mean, my wife's a physician, and I tell her your job is also getting at risk with all these medical algorithms that people use. I mean, doctors use. All this is going to be just a very quick screening for AI doctors.
So for as long as you can, find a way to make yourself even more valuable with it.
Right.
Yes, exactly.
Find a way to be able to use that to your advantage, rather than being afraid, as you say. And on that positive note, I consider that a positive note. Let's move away from the professional life, and go into a more Stuart, the person, the family man. How do you use these languages in your private life now?
No, private. Well, private life. What is private life? My family. It's really weird because my wife was the CEO of that company, and she ended up going into a military program, and it was taking a lot of her time up, and so I merged my company, so I took her job, but she was still in the company, and so both of us, our private life was our professional life, and has been for the past 15 years. But private life, I guess, just here amongst ourselves. My daughter, I try and play with languages as much as I can. English is her mother tongue, I guess, and Thai, but English is the stronger language, but she's definitely got the Thai there. But then also, we just got back from Sweden a couple of months ago. We were there for 10 days, and she was playing with Swedish kids the whole time because I speak Danish, and pushed it to more Swedish too. But she's back here now. She ended up speaking a ton of Swedish over there, and she still sits and speaks in Swedish while she's playing by herself at home here. And so we jump into, Swedish and play with different languages. I think, she can count and say little things in up to 11, 12 languages. But I play with my daughter in all different languages, not to get her to speaking them fluently, but more to train her ear to be able to pronounce any sound. So she can actually pronounce the difference between, listen to this, do, do, do. The D's in all of those were totally different. And if you said those four, she would hear them as four separate sounds. She wouldn't just render them as a D.
And she's what, 4 years old? 4 years now?
Yeah. So she'll click into those, and she's able to differentiate between sounds very well without realizing. Maybe she'll be telling a therapist about it in 20 years. But
so you are exposing her to, consistently, how many languages?
Every day we just play with because we Thai and English, of course, but then speak, like, she's at an international school, so we speak in Mandarin to the parents, so she can understand.
School in Mandarin?
Sorry?
It's an international school in Mandarin?
No, in English, but there are Taiwanese and Chinese kids in there as well. There are Russians. There are a whole bunch of Israelis in there, and she's hearing all these languages around the place. There's so many different nations, and so I'll be speaking to the parents in their languages at the school, and Jordan comes in and she knows bits in all of those languages, or if they're the Indonesians, she knows enough to introduce herself and say some things in Indonesian, but she's got the accent. Even her Swedish, like the R in Swedish, even I can't do the R that she got after 10 days there, because I've got my Danish muscles fixed in place. So I think her ear is very good. What she does with it, I'll be fascinated to watch over the next 10 years.
Absolutely. So do you believe that ears are the most important thing, that listening skills over output?
I believe sound intelligence.
Sound intelligence. Oh, you gotta define that.
So the ability to hear a sound and then reproduce it in your mouth.
To hear and recognize the difference towards other sounds, and to isolate it as well.
And be able to do a facsimile of it, or if it's not a facsimile of it, for these red alarm bells to be flashing inside your mouth, thinking you got it wrong, and then developing self-correction through your own ears is a huge skill to have.
But do you believe that it's an ability that only kids have, or that kids have a much stronger ability to hear and reproduce?
I believe you can nip it in the bud. And so this is what I'm trying to get her to a point where she hears his sounds agnostic of anything. I think as native speakers of any language, without having the freak element, you just get locked into this sound system. and so that becomes the filter that becomes so strong. So if you can find a way to circumvent that early on, I think that's valuable. But I've also taught people who are even, in their 40s and 50s to use their ear, and they can start actually applying the same principles. So it's not that it's impossible, but as a kid, it's definitely much easier and more precise.
Fantastic. Wow. So she's got a bright future, not just linguistically, but having a freak dad who's going to open her mind to all sorts of things.
We just took her to she's got a new singing coach. She lives to sing. And so this guy, he's from the US. He's a Berkeley, graduate, and he's trained all his life in theater. And they had a ball there at his place. Just anything with music and sound, she's just buzzed.
Goodness. Oh my goodness. I want to be your kid.
We'll see.
Let's be fun. All right, let's wrap it up with just some forward thoughts, I guess. What's coming up for you guys? What any big projects, whether it's professional or family?
Well, my wife and I have just come out of that tech company. We still have our own companies, and she does that, and so it's actually
in the hotel business.
Yeah, so she has a hotel publication, and she's also, she also works with those through the region, and she does a whole bunch of stuff, I guess, in the hospitality hotel side. She also has a company that makes uniforms and stuff, and then my business back in consulting. I'm still doing that and running training and all of this, and still in tech. So I've also teamed up with another tech company here, and we're still providing like tech solutions and everything. But I'm loving just getting back into this whole thing. And I think I put a clip out. I'll be doing it more. But my Cracking Thai Fundamentals book, that's like almost 10 years that I published it. I've taught Cracking Thai Fundamentals since 2000. And so I have put together a series, Cracking Language Fundamentals, which basically spreads across all languages using these same principles. You've got like cornerstones, so tones. Tones are common to all of them. There's some foundational knowledge that is foundational to all tonal languages. So giving that, and then being able to then go into that language, but say you might want to learn another tonal language, well, then you've got the foundation. And I don't know if you've seen before, Tetsu, that say it frustrates the heck out of me, say going to learn Vietnamese. And if you're a Chinese speaker learning Vietnamese, most of the stuff teaches through English, and they're trying to teach you this crazy convoluted way. And so what I want to do is take away all of that convolutedness. And if you're a Chinese speaker, or if you have kanji or whatever, then you can actually start from that point rather than having to learn through English speaker mind. So anyway, that's that. It's about 70% there, and all constructed, and now I'm just building the final books out of that.
So much exciting stuff coming up. So we wish you the very best. Thank you so much once again for sharing your insights, your expertise, and then a lot of your private life too. So thank you so much once again. Thank you to all the viewers. Once again, we'd like to announce that Raising Multilinguals Live will go on a little sabbatical in the next few months, at least to the end of this year, to prepare something different, something special with all the past 4 years of interview, all the contents that we've accumulated so far, that we've just been too busy to sort of go into that. So we want to block out this time and work on something special for you guys. So look for something coming up in 2025. And Stuart, thank you so much. It's been fascinating. It's been a fascinating way for us to do our last session of the 4-year run that we've had so far. So thank you for making that special. Uta, any last messages for everybody watching?
Yes, I just would like to thank Stuart again for being our guest, and for closing these 4 years of Raising Multilinguals Live with him, maybe unknowingly, but with an outlook towards the future of these children that we want to grow up with, these superpowers, if we want to define them like that or not. I just say it out loud, of growing up with multiple languages in the best possible way, and to play around. And I think you sent this message very clearly, that there are patterns to be recognized and not to be afraid of seeing them, using them, enjoying them, and moving into all directions that you can, and using them to your own, to work at some point in different settings and different work or jobs. So thank you very much, Steve.
Thank you. It's been an honor, and you guys are doing awesome stuff. And if you can inspire these kids, that's phenomenal. We need more.
Thank you so much. All right, everybody. For now, just a little goodbye, and we'll be back with more. Just look for the announcements on our different channels on YouTube, LinkedIn, and Facebook, and Instagram. All righty.
Yeah.
Thank you so much, everybody. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.
See you.